It's time to turn it up. Let's get it, bro. Let's go. Come on. Oh, let's go. Come on. Good one. Oh. All right, top work is done. 2x5 on 180 kilograms. I quite like this number. Look how nice it looks. The goal was to leave a rep in reserve on everything, and I think that I succeeded. We're kind of building back to heavy, but not quite that heavy, like 200 kilograms. Hopefully we're there in the next few weeks, but I've been off heavy benching for the last month or so because of shoulder pain, and I can happily say no shoulder pain. So today, I want to talk to you about structural balance. What is structural balance? The idea is to have a balanced physique with equal amount of muscularity and strength on the upper body to the lower body, the front of the body to the back of the body, the right of the body to the left of the body. Now, this is a concept that you may be familiar with, may not. If you're not, I'll introduce you. Firstly, I'll start with where I learnt about it, and that was from my early mentor, Charles Poliquin. Sadly, he's passed away, but he's arguably one of the best personal trainers ever. This concept of structural balance, the way that he taught it, is different to the way that I apply it with my coaching and my own training. So the way that he taught it was, he's got some tests where basically for the upper body, your bench press is the benchmark, close grip bench press with a 4-second eccentric and flat feet, no arch. Close grip means biacromial width grip, call that 100%, so that's your benchmark. And then all of the other lifts need to be a certain percentage based on that. So what are those lifts? I could have the percentages slightly off, but roughly incline press should be 91% of that. Your dips should be, it's like 116% of that. That includes your body weight plus the additional weight. Pull-ups, I think it's 80-something%. Bicep curl, 46% for 1 rep. Dumbbell external rotation, 9.8% for 8 reps. And the idea is if any of those numbers are off, so usually most people are dominant with their bench press because most people favor that lift. And if the other lifts are a lower percentage than the ones that I just mentioned, that's an imbalance. And by strengthening the other lifts so that they are up to par with those percentages, then as a result of being more balanced, your bench press numbers would increase. So that's basically how I'm paraphrasing the lessons taught by Charles Poliquin to me with upper body. Lower body has its own percentages as well. Now, in my experience, those percentages are just, I've never really achieved them with myself or any of the athletes that I've worked with. I love to have them as a guide, kind of like everything that I learn about. So whether it's scientific research or whatever it is, I don't just say, well, this is what the science says, so this is what it must be. I let it guide me to make more informed decisions. So with those percentages, I have a decent understanding of roughly kind of where I should be, but if I'm not at those percentages, I don't get upset about it. And the way that I apply it is slightly different. The way that I apply it is by simply prescribing an equal amount of volume to all of those components of the body. So in general, 50% of your volume is upper body, 50% is lower body, 50% is front of body, 50% is back of body. So how would I apply that on my bench press session? An equal amount of pulling to my pushing exercises. So a very simplified way of illustrating that is to say a push-pull ratio of 1:1. Now, of course, that's not perfect, and a lot of people get upset thinking, oh, it can't be 1:1 because whatever, and I agree, it's not 1:1, but I don't get upset. I just think it's a very easy way of illustrating that I want to be placing equal emphasis from my pushing muscles to my pulling muscles. It just seems logical to me. I want to have equal amount of muscularity on the muscles of the front of the body to the muscles of the back of my body. I don't want to have imbalances, and I want my right side to be as big and strong as my left side. In bodybuilding and aesthetics, the athletes are judged on things like symmetry and proportion. So having balance when it comes to aesthetics is also quite important. And the best way of monitoring that, especially in the beginning, is to apply equal amount of volume and effort in all of those sections. So I split that up with my exercise selection into 8 categories, 4 in the upper body, 4 in the lower body. So upper body is horizontal push-pull and vertical push-pull. Lower body is 2 squat patterns and 2 bend patterns. So the squat patterns are hip dominant squat, like low bar squats or leg presses or long stride lunges, and knee dominant squat, like a front squat or a high bar squat, a stiletto squat or a hack squat. And then the bend pattern, I have 2 functions of the hamstrings, which are knee flexion and hip extension. So knee flexion is like your hamstring curl exercises, seated, laying, Nordic drops, glute ham raise. And then hip extension are your RDLs, good mornings, 45-degree hyperextensions, you may call them, 90 degrees. So equal amount of volume in each of those categories is a general guide for applying equal amount of effort and energy into evenly spread out across my entire body. Of course, I know some of you at home who are into this type of thing might be thinking, where's calves? What about direct arm work and forearms and neck? Yes, okay, we do have exceptions to this. It's not perfect, and there's not really a model that is perfect. But that's kind of how I apply it. Now, let's put this into practice. So this is where I talk about structural balance shouldn't be the goal of your training. It should be a tool that we use to help us make great decisions with our long-term programming. But the goal shouldn't be to be balanced. I mean, we can work towards it, just like, it's nice to say, I want to be perfect, but perfection doesn't exist either, right? So the way that we need to consider it is we use it as a guide, and the way that I consider it, if we were to write a long-term training program, is if we get the long-term further away from our either peaking date or competition date or whatever it is that we're training for, further away from that. In general, we want things like accumulation phases. We want to be doing things like more volume, more variation of exercises, and then gradually over the course of the long-term plan, we decrease the volume so that we can gradually increase the load. We're also decreasing variation of exercise over the long term so that we can increase specificity. Now, I want you to think of variation and specificity like the way that I apply structural balance. So further away from competition or peaking date, I want you to factor in, or how I do it myself, I factor in more structural balance because I know that as I get closer to my peaking, one of the biggest characteristics of peaking in strength or getting ready for competition, say, is to reduce fatigue by reducing volume, by eliminating the non-necessary exercises. So like the variations, we want to eliminate those. So for a powerlifting competition or a powerlifter, as we get closer to competition, you're pretty much doing squat, bench, and deadlift, and as minimal as possible accessory exercises to support that. And the accessory exercises that you use are going to be low-cost exercises, like maybe leg extensions, leg curls, maybe a little bit of arm isolation, non-fatiguing exercises. But this is where, because we're not doing a lot of variation of exercises, that's when it's almost impossible to consider being balanced with our programming. So as you get closer to competition, you won't be balanced. So one of my favorite quotes from a dear friend of mine and a mentor, may he rest in peace, Dr. Andrew Locke, he taught me, if you want to be balanced, be prepared to be a little bit shit at everything. So it's like, yeah, that's so true. So high performance is extremely unbalanced, right? So what's balance mean with high performance? It's not just about training and front of the body, back of the body, upper body, lower body. It's also other factors in your life. So this is where we think about high performance requires time away from things like family and business. So when people talk about things like work-life balance, the most successful business owners always laugh at those things and say, there's no such thing as balance when it comes to high performance in business. Same with high performance in sport, and same with exactly what I'm talking about here. So the closer you get to high performance, the more unbalanced you're going to be. So if you're not perfectly balanced, if you're not following a perfect principle of 1-to-1 push-pull ratio, you're not a bad person, and that's kind of like not what you should be doing as you get closer to competition. However, what about when you're not in competition? This is where I say, so further away from competition, we do more volume, we do more variation, and this is why I say you want to factor in more balance work further away from competition, because you know that when you get into your peaking phase, you're not going to have the time, energy, or effort to be spending on making sure that we're perfectly balanced, right? So further away from competition, those are some of the things you want to be factoring in. So let's just say furthest away from competition, some of the things that I love to do is follow that principle of push-pull ratio of 1-to-1. And a lot of the times, if you've been following my upper body sessions, you'll see that I aim to kind of achieve that loosely. So 1-to-1, what does that mean? I just did 2 sets of 5. Does that mean I'm going to do 2 sets of 5 on a pulling exercise? No, because I don't do 5 on pulling exercises, because those types of exercises don't suit that low rep range. So we've got to think about when we're prescribing reps, a lot of people think things like, what's your favorite rep range to do things, as if you should only choose one. And that's a big error, because if all you do is choose one favorite exercise, one favorite rep range, you're missing out on so much value in all of your other exercises and rep ranges, etc. So what I consider when I'm prescribing the right rep ranges for exercises is the compatibility with the specific exercise. Compound movements, squat, bench press, and deadlift, they kind of suit your 1 rep, and I say, 1 to 6 rep range. Very suitable. So when you're doing over 6 reps for these big compound movements, it starts getting a little bit funny, right? I mean, of course you can, but like 8, 10, 12 reps on big squats and deadlifts and bench press more acceptable, but squats and deadlifts, you don't really see it too much at the highest level. And that's because they're highly complex movements. The more complex the movements, the lower the reps should be. But then you go to other exercises with less complexity, such as isolation movements, leg extensions, leg curls, bicep curls, tricep extensions. You don't really do low rep range for a number of reasons. One, if you do kind of like 1 to 6 rep range with leg extensions, your knees will hurt a lot. Low rep range with your hamstring curls. I haven't done that in a while. I haven't tried to do that in a while, but I can imagine it wouldn't feel too great. You wouldn't feel too stimulating on the muscle, right? So I feel the same way about the pulling pattern. So rows, pull-ups, pull-downs. I find that it's kind of not just about like, what does the science say about reps? It's more about, how do I feel after I do a set of those exercises? How does the target muscles feel after I perform a set of lat pull downs or rows or whatever it might be? If I was to do a 5 rep max on a lat pull down, I'd probably walk out of the machine feeling like my lats didn't really feel much, like they worked hard and it was really hard, but did it get the feel that I was after? The lats and the mid-back muscles, or whatever the muscles that I was targeting. Same with calf raises. Go and do a heavy set of 5 reps on a calf raise. Do you feel like your calves are adequately stimulated? The answer is most likely not, which is why when you see the best lifters, when they're performing these movements, they're not using those rep ranges. So if you look at bodybuilders doing their back, what are the rep ranges they're using? 8 is at the lowest range, and usually 10, 12, and up, right? So for our lat pull downs and rows. So therefore, how do I achieve balance with this session? So I've done my bench press, so how do I balance that out? As I said, I'm not going to do 2 sets of 5 on a pulling exercise. So therefore, the 1-to-1 ratio of push-pull doesn't exist. It's just a guide. Hope you understand that. So what would I do to balance this out? I like to consider that I'm going to be applying the same amount of effort in the opposing muscle group. So 2 sets of 5 here. What's an equivalent for my opposing muscles? So if I'm going to be doing a lat pull down or a row or something like that, what's the equivalent of 2 pretty big sets of 5? Like, this is a pretty demanding session, even though I've only done 2 sets. I would say probably like 3 sets of 12 is probably what I'm going to be using to feel like I've performed equal amount of effort on my pulling muscles to my pushing muscles, right? So that's what I'm going to be doing. But the way that I do it is like this. I like to do agonist-antagonist supersets within my sessions. So what does that mean? Push and pull as a superset. So I do a set of push, and then instead of sitting here waiting for whatever the rest period is, for me it's 8 minutes for these heavy sets. So I've got 2 choices: sit here and wait 8 minutes, which is what I did because it's heavy, and that's what I prefer to do, especially when I'm lifting this heavy. But a lot of the times, if I'm not lifting this heavy, I'll do a set of push, wait 3 to 4 minutes, do a set of pull, wait 3 to 4 minutes, and come back and repeat. Now, what's the benefits of supersets? I've discussed this before. It's time saving, and that's all. And you can understand why. If I'm resting 8 minutes between each of these sets, if I do adequate amount of volume and sets on my session, that's going to take me a couple hours. But if you know me well enough, you'll know that this is where I work, this is where I live, this is my work. And I do allocate 2 hours for my session. So actually, when I'm lifting this heavy, I do like to sit down and rest. But if you're not like me and you do value your time and you like to get in and out of the gym, one of the best ways of having a structurally balanced approach to your training, which is a really great way of training, is to do agonist-antagonist supersets, where you do your push, you wait a couple of minutes, do your pull, wait a couple of minutes, and you come back and repeat. So either way, this is what I'm doing first, and this is what I consider to be standalone. Now for my secondary exercises, so the first exercise of the day is always the hardest, the heaviest, the highest relevance to achieving your goal. Then we consider the secondary exercises. Now, what I like to do with my secondary exercises, write this down if you want, is consider the joint angles, ranges of motion, and muscles that you've neglected in the main movement. What did I neglect here with my competition style wide grip arch bench press? The first thing that I neglected is that range of motion. Right? So that's the whole reason why I'm doing that technique, is to reduce the range of motion to shift more loads. So therefore, I want to factor that in with my accessory exercises to make sure I'm not creating any weak points. So what's the best exercise? You got it, dumbbell pressing. But the next thing I've already done flat, so I'm going to choose a different angle for my dumbbell presses. So one of my favorite combinations to get pure balance, even though balance is impossible, but you understand, take that with a grain of salt, is to pair my bench pressing with seated dumbbell shoulder press. That's a way to factor in all of the angles that I've neglected. So I've done a horizontal push plane. Now we go and do some vertical pushing with my accessory exercises. And that is something that I'm not going as heavy. I can't go as heavy because I'm fatigued now. I've spent most of my energy on the first exercise of the day. So now for my secondary work, I reduce the intensity, and now that's when I am going to be applying my agonist-antagonist supersets. So now I'm going to be doing seated dumbbell shoulder press, and I'm going to be pairing that with something that I've included is my banded pull-ups, because I'm not strong enough to do bodyweight pull-ups because they're heavy. 2 to 3 top sets of each of those. I felt like I was slipping. 3 hardest parts. 1, slipping. 2, well, lifting it up. It was like, oh. And then 3, putting it back on that rack. Pressing was okay. Of course, a bit of effort. But that's the controlled effort that we want. I'm going to do 1 more set of 8. Another topic. 2 sets of my top sets. Yeah, that's right. A lot of the times we're used to seeing 3 to 5 sets, and I write 3 to 5 sets in most instances, except when you get to a point where you're lifting pretty heavy. Then it's kind of like 1 to 2 top sets of the heavy exercises. So maybe you'll agree, I don't know, but I think that this is heavy. So that's why 2 sets is all I'm doing. Pull-ups, I consider the same as pull-downs. Of course, it's a slightly different exercise, but it's the same muscle groups, right? And it should therefore also be the same movement. So when I'm doing my pull-ups, something that I teach people that do really, really heavy pull-ups is, it's fine if you do that, but your back needs to look the same as it does on a lat pull-down. So what does that mean? It means the technique on a lat pull-down is typically, from a full stretch to shoulder blades back and down, full stretch, shoulder blades back and down. But then a lot of the times when people come to their pull-ups, you see this thing happening. They don't get the mid-back recruitment. If your shoulder blades aren't coming back and down, if they're not coming together or going down, you're not using your mid-back muscles. Some of you may be thinking, that's fine, I'm only doing it for my lats. If that's the case, great. But whenever I train my back, I always like to consider, why train my lats in absence of my mid-back muscles? I want them all to be strong together. And I guess this is coming from a strength bias, rather than a bodybuilding bias. So bodybuilders love having big lats and they love to isolate different exercises to target a specific muscle. Whereas with me, I like to strengthen the push pattern and the pull pattern, horizontal push pattern, vertical push pattern, horizontal pull pattern, vertical pull pattern. And from a function standpoint, that's how I like to see all of my pull patterns. Full stretch with a full range of motion in scapular movement as well. So this is one of my keys for shoulder health and shoulder balance, is to take it through the fullest range of motion, which is where we hang and stretch, and then we retract and depress. So protraction and upwards rotation to get to this point, and then retraction, depression to get to that bottom point. That's why I like to use the band assistance, because quite frankly, I like to do high reps. And for me, I'm about 102-ish kilograms. Oh, that's just too heavy for me to do. The high rep range that I want to do. All right, now. 12 reps on that. If you saw the technique on that, you'll agree that the last reps I was missing out on that final bit of scapular movement, which is retraction depression. So for me, that's the indication of, all right, the set is over. I'm going to give myself enough rest and do one more set of each. No, it's only because he's banded. That's fine. It's only because he's banded. Anyway, time for my third exercise. Well, that was 2 and 3, but I'm going to be doing my shoulder health exercise, which is what I like to finish with. And there's lots of different choices that I have here. Sometimes I'll do arms, a bit of balance. But today is my shoulder health day. So usually I choose one type of shoulder health exercise, so shoulder ancillary, targeting things like rotator cuff, so external rotation, or lower trapezius exercise, or like face pulls, or serratus anterior. So these are the muscles that support the shoulder. So the rotator cuff muscles sit on the scapula and they hold the head of the humerus, which is the upper arm bone, inside the scapula. But then we also need to strengthen the muscles that stabilize the scapula so the rotator cuff muscles can do their job. So I usually rotate between different types of exercises that strengthen that structure. And at the moment, I'm quite enjoying my rear delt raises. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Sets of 20 on those when I catch my breath. Thank you. Thank you. Did you know that we have 3 muscles that externally rotate the shoulder? So when people say I'm training rotator cuff, well, depends what exercise, because rotator cuff, there's 4 muscles. And of the rotator cuff muscles that are responsible for external rotation is the infraspinatus, teres minor, and there's one more muscle, and that is the rear deltoid. So when we strengthen all of our big pushing muscles that strengthen pecs, pulling muscles that strengthen lats, they are strong internal rotators. And if you want to create balance, that's why it's a good idea to strengthen the external rotators. So those are the 3 muscles we're targeting: infraspinatus, teres minor, and rear deltoid, which is why I love including rear deltoid work to improve my shoulder health, and you should too. Look at the size of my rear deltoid. You're welcome. Does it look big, honestly? No, no pump? But does it look like it's a big rear delt? We'll see. We'll see. Does it look like I trained my rear delts? Damn, I've got to do more sets. Yeah, it's probably because it's covered on the tattoos. I've got to get the right lighting. Is this side better? Thanks, bro. So this morning, I was watching the muscle doc, Jordan Shallows, and he put up a post on front raises for rotator cuff, of all things. And he said, you know, to strengthen the external rotators, well, he said rotator cuff, but, you know, we'll break it down. He said, you can do, you know, these things. He said, but you get to a point where that's kind of like you need to progress from there. And I consider these front raises, when I say I, that's Jordan Shallow's words, I consider the front raises to be my favorite rotator cuff exercise. So I figured, you know what? Why not? Why not include them? This is a perfect time to include them, especially in light of the whole discussion of achieving structural balance, hitting my rear delts, and then hitting my front delts. Either way, I'll tell you what I consider this to be: a low-cost, feel-good exercise. Great way to finish your session that's not going to interfere with. So a lot of the times it's like, you do your main work, don't do all these other big exercises because we need to recover. This isn't going to be energy consuming enough to need any type of significant recovery. It's not going to interfere with the recovery needed for my heavy bench press work. But you know what? When I look in the mirror, my deltoids look big when I do that, so I like that exercise. Oof, man. But that's a pretty well-rounded deltoid pump. Low cost, feel-good exercise. And now I know, because Jordan Shallows is one of the best physios out there. Sorry, he's a chiropractor, but forget the name. Chiro, physio, rehabilitation specialist, biomechanist, understands this shit better than most people in the world because he kind of lives in it. He lives and breathes it. He's a strong guy as well. That's what I like about people that are practitioners, but they live in the trenches as well. So that's him. When he says that these are great exercises, it's like, huh, I'm gonna give it a go. And that feels good. I'm gonna do another set on each of those. And then that's the end of the session. So hope you enjoyed the education. If you're here for the education, you know, and that's what I try and do as well. As I said, with, you know, guys like Jordan and many of the people that I look up to that are practitioners at the highest level that also live in the trenches, you know, that's what I try and do. I'm showing you guys, this is the heavy lifts. I'm using the techniques that I'm teaching you that took me 20 years to learn how to do. And I'm showing you in real time exactly how they work. And if you want to just, you know, forget all the guesswork, don't make the mistakes that I made, you don't have to, right? So I've made so many mistakes to get to the position that I'm in now to just give you these tips and say, like, forget all the shit that I didn't do or forget all the shit that I did wrong. You don't have to do those things. Just do the things that I did right, and that's what I'm doing now, and you should as well. Anyway, hope you enjoy. See you guys next time. So seriously, what do you think of the deltoid?
It's huge, bro.
Thanks, bro. You mean it? So that's the thing. It's like I don't know how to do bodybuilder poses. I just stand there.